Hello, it's Tony here from Locks to Reads. I thought I'd do a video today on reading projects. Now, some time ago, I made a list of authors whose books I wanted to read everything of. Not all entirely blind. Some of them I'd already read. Some I know I knew already liked them. Some of them were in plans to reread things that I'd read a long time ago, and some were kind of what I'd put in the uh, showing off wish list stroke completist section. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk through very quick. Well, I say very quickly. I'm going to talk through the list of authors that I've been working through, what the next books are, and the sort of plan, the theoretical plan for how it's going to work. And I'm going to start with the two that I have, that I have as far as I haven't necessarily finished, but I've pretty much done. So I'm going to start with Tove Jansson. This was one of the first people who I haven't. This is one I haven't read yet, so this is on the to read list. And there are two biographies which you probably can't make out, but they're up there. Two big chunky biographies to read as well. Part of the project was to read biographies and autobiographies around these people as well. But I've read pretty much everything Tove Jansson wrote in that's been translated into English. Definitely all the short story collections. There are two novels I haven't read, Sun City and Field of Stones. Now, Sun City, I think, was recently republished by the New York Review of Books back in late 2024, but I haven't had the money to buy a copy, so I haven't got around to reading that. If anybody wants to gift me a copy, send me a copy, steal me a copy, no, don't do that. Then that'd be great. The other and Field of Stones, I don't even know if that's been. That's obviously been translated at some point, but I don't think I've ever seen a copy. And when you look on Amazon, it doesn't. When you look on Wikipedia, well, on Google and Amazon, it doesn't seem to come up at all. So I don't know about that. Again, if anybody has a copy of that they want to throw in my general direction, that'd be great. I can do my completist thing. I think this is so. This will be the next Tove Jansson thing I read, and then the two biographies, which would finish off Tove Jansson, barring those two novels, which hopefully at some point I will get my grubby little protuberances on. And the other one that I've pretty much finished is Jean Rhys. I've read all five of her. Jean Rhys is an ideal person to do this exercise with because she only wrote 5 novels. They're all very short. And this is the complete short story collection, which I am about a third of the way through, quarter of the way through. I will finish this month. And then I've read everything by Jean Rhys. I found Jean Rhys, she could be quite dark and quite hard going sometimes in the sense of you're feeling a bit. The grubby is the right word. At the end, with the exception of the Sargasso Sea. I can't remember the proper title of it now. I don't know why that's gone out of my head. Which is the Jane Eyre prequel, which is I think is a brilliant book. Makes you look at Jane Eyre in a different way. I think if you're a massive fan of Jane Eyre, maybe you don't want to read Wide Sargasso Sea. You might not Wide Sargasso Sea. You might not want to read it because you might not want to change your viewpoint on Jane Eyre. But the other novels, which it's almost like the other novels are her getting to the point where she's perfecting what she's trying to write. And the last one, Good Morning Midnight. Yes, Good Morning Midnight is brilliant. It's superb. But I think you kind of have to read the other ones to see what she's trying to do. So yeah, Jean Rhys, almost finished. And then we get on to the ones where, actually, with the exception of the other one was a Douglas Adams reread. I was going to read all the Hitchhiker's novels and the Dirk Gently novels. I have read those many, many, many times. I reread The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in January. I'm only planning to reread the ones that were actually written by Douglas Adams himself, not the ones written by other people afterwards. So I've read those, but I'm rereading those. Rereading will come into some of the other ones. So next up was Jane Austen. Now, I have read Pride and Prejudice. That's all the Austen I've read. So, part of this project is I try to do them if possible in publication order, which is not always that's not always how I've started them because, as I said, some of these people I'd read stuff before I picked the list. So we're going back to Sense and Sensibility. and then I will reread Pride and Prejudice, and then on to the rest of them. So that's Jane Austen. Next up is Iain Banks and Iain M. Banks. Now, I have read 4 Iain Banks novels: Walking on Glass, Espadare Street, The Crow Road, and Complicity. Walking on Glass I liked. The other 3 I love. And there are, as far as I can count, 10 left. So we're going back to The Wasp Factory as my next read. And then Iain M. Banks, the plan is to read the Culture series, which I think is 10 books. I've read 7 of them, of which Player of Games is still just about my favourite. I am on Matter. Next, I love Iain M. Banks. I love how he pulls strands of plot together, and I like the idea of the Culture series. Then there is the Bronte Sisters. Now, I've read Jane Eyre more than once. I've read Wuthering Heights, and I've read The Complete Poems by Emily Bronte. But I haven't read any Anne Bronte, and I haven't read any other Bronte Sisters novel. So the plan is to go back. I think the publication also suggests that Agnes Grey... It might just be alphabetical order, and then... Because Anne is before the others in terms of... If you go surname, first name. Agnes Grey appears to be the next one on my list. Know nothing about this book. Know nothing about Anne Bronte. She seems to be the slightly forgotten Bronte sister. So there's that. Then there's Anita Brookner. Now, Anita Brookner's written, I discovered today when I was doing my research, a lot more novels than are on my spreadsheet. So there's going to have to be some reassessment of the plan for that. But I've read 3 so far, all of which I've enjoyed. She is similar-ish to Barbara Pym, who we'll come on to in terms of the mix or the sort of type of book she's writing and the dryness of the humour. In fact, if you did a line, you went sort of Barbara Pym, Anita Brookner, Jean Rhys as a kind of 3 writers, not necessarily doing the same thing, but who you could group, who I think you could kind of group together. One of whom is the darkest of whom is Jean Rhys, the lightest of whom so far is Barbara Pym, and in the middle is Anita Brookner. So my next book is for her is Hotel du Lac. Now this is obviously I think it's probably her most famous novel. So yeah, that's that, and it's short. And then after that, Charles Dickens. I've read 4 of his novels, plus A Christmas Carol. I've read, going back to its publication order, I'd read the Pickwick Papers, which I enjoyed, but it's very much more like a collection. Is a sort of very. It's really short stories and sort of pushed together into a novel. So next up is Oliver Twist, which I've never read. I know the story because I've seen the musical, I've seen Oliver, and I've seen the film, the TV series. So yeah, Oliver Twist. That's next. After that, Elizabeth Gaskell. Now, I've read 2 Elizabeth Gaskell novels, Mary Barton and North and South, but I read those a long time ago. I read Mary Barton a long time ago. I was going to do my university thesis on the use of history, so the use of fiction as a historical source, with specific reference to the Preston Cotton Strike of 1853-54, which makes Mary Barton and Hard Times by Charles Dickens relevant. And I read those then, and I read another couple of books, Disraeli book, for example, with preparation for that. So I'm going to reread Mary Barton, so that's the next one to go back. But what I'm planning to do is I've got to decide which one to do first. I don't want to do Gaskell and Dickens at the same time, even though they are contemporaries. So I probably will either do Gaskell first and then Dickens, or Dickens first and then Gaskell. These are all obviously long-term projects. There's no way I'm doing this all in kind of like a month. Then Grahame Greene, who I love. I've read 7 of his books. Brighton Rock and The End of the Affair being 2 of my favourite novels of all time. Surprisingly, Brighton Rock I did at school and still love. So yeah, Grahame Greene. I can't remember what the next one is on my list. I need to go back because I've picked up Grahame Greene in odd orders. I think the next one I need to read in publication order is It's a Battlefield, which is one of the 2 earlier ones which nobody thinks is particularly up to much. And if it's as bang average as the Stromboli train, and I can see why. Then there's Milan Kundera. I've read The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and I've read Ignorance. Going in publication order, I need to go back to right to the beginning, which is The Joke. So that's the next one. John le Carre, I've read 5 of his books: Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and the follow-up to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I've read numerous times, and I've read The Spy Who Came in with the Cold several times. Next one for him, I can't actually remember. I need to go. I think that's a going back one, but I can't remember what's next. But A Murder of Quality I have read. So that's next. Then there is Ursula Le Guin. Now the plan with that is to read all the Hainish cycle and the Earthsea novels. I reread the Earthsea trilogy recently, so that's done, and I've read 9 of the Hainish cycle. Next up on the Hainish cycle is this classic, which I've never read, so I'm really looking forward to it. I think this is considered to be one of her great books, so I'm looking forward to that. Then there is Murakami, a man who defies opinion. I've read 14 of his books, but the next one, and the reason there's been a bit of a hold on me reading Murakami, is 1Q84, which, as you can see, is a chunky boy. But that's the next one in my list. So, some point we've got to get to that. I'm piling these up beside me, and I'm worried they're all going to fall over. So if you hear a crash shortly, it's because all the books in this pile have fallen over. Now, the next 2 I don't have any hard copies of. I'm reading Anthony Powell's Dance to the Music of Time. I'm supposed to be reading it along with Alyssa at Nerdy Nurse Reads. I'm on book 1. She's reached book 4. I need to catch up. That's priority for June. So the plan is to read that. There's 12 books. Theoretically, I should have done one a month. I am massively behind, but I am going to catch up and finish that. I've enjoyed the first book, which I've read twice now, and I just need to move on to the next ones. The next person is Terry Pratchett. The plan is to reread the Discworld novels plus Good Omens. Brackets, ignore Neil Gaiman, close brackets. I read a chunk of these at the time of publication, and I've reread the first 2 again as part of this reread, stroke read. Weird Sisters, I think, is next, because I think that's book 3. And I'm planning to do that. Well, I'll talk about this at the end. Next was it was Barbara Pym. George Orwell. George Orwell. I have read a number of Orwell's books. 4 or 5. But again, I'm doing publication on, so I'm going back to the Burmese days. My general understanding is it's considered that his novels that aren't 1984 and Animal Farm aren't that great. I've tried starting Burmese Days about 3 times, and I'm beginning to think that might be the case. But I'm a belligerent git when it comes to finishing books, so I'll give this another go. Then there's Barbara Pym. Now, Pym, I have read 4 of her novels. The next one actually isn't this one. The next one is Jane and Prudence, because when I did my original list, it didn't have every Pym novel on it, so I've got to go back to Jane and Prudence. And then onwards and upwards. There are basically more Pym novels than I thought when I did my original list. My ridiculous reading spreadsheet I thought had every Barbara Pym novel, like I thought it had every Anita Brookner novel. It doesn't. It has loads of them missing. I've talked about G. Oh, another one that I haven't got a copy of, because everything I've got owned by her now is on Kindle. Is Dorothy L Sayers' The Lord Peter Wimsey books. I've X to the power of 300. Reread Strong Poison and Have His Carcass, both which I loved reading again. I love those books. That sort of trilogy of God, anyway, my brain's going. and this also includes the complete short stories. This list also includes complete story, which, if I remember rightly, isn't just Peter Wimsey books. There are some others. There are some other people in it. But the plan is to reread all the Lord Peter Wimsey books. I think I've read pretty much all of them at least once. Might be wrong about that in its entirety. So I look forward to rereading those. Shakespeare. The plan was to read a Shakespeare play every month, which I haven't done. I have, over time, there are, I think, 37, 39 of them. I have seen 27 of them on stage, and I have read, I don't know how many I've actually read. I've read quite a lot over the years, but I need to read them in order. I haven't actually decided how I'm going to do the Shakespeare plays. My theoretical plan is to do the historicals in, so do Roman plays, the sort of semi-fictional historical British things, then the actual historical plays. So starting with Richard II, and then moving through to Henry VIII, and then do the others in some kind of order. Not officially finalised yet, but that's the plan. Then there is the Strugatsky Brothers. I have read two of them. I've read Roadside Picnic, and I've read Monday is on a Saturday. Love both of those. I need to when I do it, I need to reread. I'm going to reread them both because I like them so much. But actually, the next one is Hard to Be a God. I know there's people get snarky about the covers on SF Masterworks, but I don't think they work for me. I think it's more because the spines and the backs are all sort of, and it doesn't really matter what's on the front cover to me anyway. They look magnificent on the shelf. I'd love to have a full collection of SF Masterworks. And finally, and the one I haven't actually read anything of, even though I've started, is Elizabeth Tayler, including her complete short stories. This is the first novel on the list, Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont. So that's the first one for me to read. I haven't read any of her so far. I might leave Elizabeth Tayler until I've finished Barbara Pym. That's that. So that is my sort of fictional. Oh God, I've got to move this without it falling over. Please don't fall over. Please don't fall over. Yes, right, lovely. So that's my sort of. That was my 2 years ago. I think I did this reading plan, and it's gone to mess. No plan ever survives contact with the enemy, because I always get distracted by other things. And it's a big old project. There's a lot of books on some of these and a lot of chunky classics. So it's a challenge that is quite a challenge, and that doesn't include non-fiction projects. I'll do a short stop here to talk about non-fiction projects. Sometimes they're more rabbit holes than projects. Like currently, I've got Max Hastings' Normandy book sword book to read that I got from the library. But I feel like I should prep myself by reading some more books about the Normandy campaign, so I'm not immediately hypnotised by Hastings' version of events, because I have some issues with Max Hastings as a historian. I think he's mostly fine, but I think he's got some bees in his bonnet that I think have an effect on what he writes. And I was looking at next year is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and I thought, well, maybe so in 2026, maybe in June, July, whatever the date where the actual signing was, I will do an American revolutionary history project. It's a set of events that I know a little bit about, but not a lot. Partly because as an English person, Independence Days from the British Empire are multiple, and therefore the American War of Independence matters a lot less to me than it does to Americans. Although if you look at the current regime, I'm wondering how many Americans actually have read their own constitution read their own independent Declaration of Independence. Should be something you're doing at the moment. So yeah, and I'm thinking about some non-fiction projects for next year. Well, for the rest of this year and next year. But I haven't finalised those. I might do a separate video on those at some point in the future. I want to do. I'm almost tempted to devote a whole year to one topic. I know I say these things, but I know full well that I am easily distracted by other things. But I think if I can really focus on it, I can make an effort to do that. It just needs to be the right set of events, or maybe like 6 months on one subject, 6 months on another subject. Do a deep dive, make some videos about it, write some essays, and just pretend that I'm doing a history degree again. So those are my sort of ongoing theoretical reading projects that are currently being ignored because I have 20 odd books from the library that I need to read. So the plan for June is to finish all the library books, take them all back, and then July go back to my reading projects. So obviously I've been working through some of them, and then going back through the reading projects for the authors that I've been determined to read. There are some chunkers on there. So, like for example, I think 1Q84 by Murakami is probably going to have to be spread over 2 months. I could read it in 1 month, but it would probably mean not reading a lot of other things. I am a reasonably fast reader, but I'm not that fast a reader, particularly fiction. But I'm not that fast a reader. And yeah, so I just thought I'd do you a nice video on the madness of Tony Cross and his ridiculous reading programs. And I will update you on how it is going. Well, I'll update at the beginning of July with a list of books that I'm planning to read. And then we'll see whether I can read them or not. Have a good day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.